the Injury Prevention Department at Harlem Hospital, and he's going to show you guys how to stop the bleed.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. All right, I'm gonna let that slide because it's after lunch. I won't force it, but I'm gonna need some energy. And if I see any sleepy eyes, I might call you out. So you don't want to be on live stream getting called out. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for those that have been here since this morning for staying. It is very important that we learn all of this information because it's all about being prepared in case of an emergency, in case of an accident, in case of an injury. Is there anyone here that's immune to any of those? Okay, just making sure, because, you know, we do every now and then I do these and I have a superhero raise his or her hand and say, oh, no, I've never been injured. I've never been in an accident. That's never going to happen to me. And, you know, the rest of the room just does exactly that. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Stop the Bleed. Stop the Bleed is, in my opinion, a little bit of an aggressive title, but it's important because it hits right at home at what we're trying to do. We are trying to stem and stop the flow of blood and stop blood loss. Why is it important to do that? Because studies have been shown, or studies rather have been done in the military that show that most people expire not from the injury itself, not from the IED that blew up in the road, not from any engagement activities they may be in. No, they die from blood loss. Blood loss. These are preventable deaths. I don't want to use his name in vain, but most recently, uptown, we have the case of the young man, Mr. Guzman, who was attacked and stabbed repeatedly, and there's video of him running around seeking help. He hopped over a bodega counter, hopped back over a bodega counter, was kind of trying to get to the hospital. All of that movement made his heart beat faster. When your heart beat faster, what's happening to the blood in your body? It's being pushed faster and harder. And if you have too many exit points for that blood, you're going to have a lot of blood loss. And so I don't call his name in vain. And I don't even feel comfortable up here standing and saying that his death could have been prevented. However, with the techniques that I'm going to show today, I do know that it can make a difference. I do know that these techniques save lives. It's proven. This isn't my opinion. This is fact. Okay, so we're going to just quickly review a couple of things. And before we do that, I just want to say to the room, raise your hand if you know what stop, drop, and roll means. All right? Stop, drop, and roll. Even though I don't see hands, I'm going to assume most people know. All right? Why do we know that? We know that because it's been taught to us in school. We know that because we've seen TV PSAs. We know that because we just do, right? But we didn't always know that. In the 1950s, rayon fabric was very popular, and a bunch of other fashion choices that we won't go back to. But the fabric was very flammable. And so what happened is people were being burnt up and all of these crazy fires, and people were like, whoa, what's going on? So rather than just attack the, fabric makers, I said, no, we need some public education. The very first TV PSA was a stop, drop, and roll TV PSA by Dick Van Dyke. He did the very first TV PSA for stop, drop, and roll. Stop, drop, and roll is so effective that they have to go back and reteach young people, because a kid will see a fire across the street and go, oh, fire, and stop, drop, and roll on the spot. So that's how effective that campaign has been. We want Stop the Bleed to be just as effective. The same way we talk about fire safety with our young people, we need to be talking about wound management. I was a latchkey kid. My mom made sure that I knew where the fire extinguisher was. I mean, she pretty much threatened my life if I burned our house down. So I had to know where the fire extinguisher was. I had to know what to do in the event of a grease fire, not put water on it, use flour or salt. And so my parents made sure I knew these things. And so I know a lot of other parents make sure that their young people know these things as well. And so the same way we talk about fire safety, we need to talk about wound management. So I have a mannequin here. This mannequin has 3 different injuries on it. We have a bullet wound injury here at the top and on the back as well. And then we have a cut or piercing injury here at the bottom. Now, this may not look that bad, but as I walk around and I open it up, you can see it's pretty deep. It's a pretty deep cut. And so if someone around you were to sustain an injury like this, what do you do? Right? Where are all my fighters from the active shooter scenario? These are my fighters, right? Or is this a new group? How many people saw the active shooter scenario? All right, so these are my fighters. Don't throw anything at me. But these are my fighters, right? Well, unfortunately, somebody got hit. We stopped the active shooter. We got help. We prevented deaths from those of us in the room, but somebody got hit. What do? The first thing you do, call 911, right? I'm not a medical trained professional. I don't know who all in this room is or is not, but you want to call 911. You want to get that process started. You don't want to be in the middle of trying to save somebody's life and be trying to get your phone out with one hand in the pocket, trying to save some. No, you don't want to do that. Call 911. If you are the person rendering aid or providing comfort to the person that has been injured, you want to be very intentional with your request to call 911. If I go, oh my God, somebody call 911, everybody hears that. They run over to see why I said it first, right? Because they want to see too. Oh, why do you say that? And then they go, okay, well, somebody has it, right? Because that was my call. I said somebody call 911. So somebody has it. All right, and the reality is the diffusion of responsibility states that nobody will make that call. So you want to be very intentional. If you're rendering aid, you want to say, you, sir, in the cream jacket, call 911. All right, you want to be very intentional. All right, so we've started that process. We've got 911. Help is on the way. But this person is bleeding, and it's a lot of blood. And we just discussed that most deaths are actually due to loss of blood. So now we have to use our stop the bleed or bleeding control techniques. The first technique is one that everybody kind of instinctually knows, is applying direct pressure. Okay? But in the event of a serious injury, we're not just talking about putting your hands on the wound, right? I know some of us are spiritual and energy people. We're not talking about laying hands on someone. We're talking about putting enough pressure to compress the veins and arteries to stop the flow of blood. So I want to be very clear on what direct pressure means in this type of scenario. Direct pressure means you got to put some oomph into it, and you have to hold it steady until help arrives. Now, when we talk about direct pressure, there are a couple of things that I just want to quickly go over. Some things that might be instinct that you might have to act against. If you have a t-shirt and you're applying direct pressure, and you see blood starting to soak through that t-shirt, instinctually you might go, oh, whoa, this thing is soaked with blood. I need a clean shirt. And you take that off, and you get another shirt and put it on, right? Because it's clean. It has to be clean, right? No, you do not want to remove. Once you started applying pressure, you do not want to let up until EMS taps you on the shoulder and says, we got it from here. Okay, if you do see whatever you're using start to pool with blood, you want to grab another t-shirt, towel, whatever you have, put it right on top, and continue that steady pressure. All right, the body is wonderful. It's a machine. As soon as you get injured, it starts to heal itself. And when you apply pressure and lift that or lift whatever material you're using up, you may inadvertently tear the small, thin layer that's already started to form, the blood that's already started to clot. Okay, so you want to be very careful. You want to apply pressure. If you feel it's getting too soaked, you put something else right on top and you maintain that steady pressure. Okay, so that's our first technique, direct pressure. But guess what? It's still bleeding. Now we're getting a little nervous because the injury looks bad. What do? It's okay. We stay calm, because we have to help the person that's injured. Can't be two of us hollering around, rolling on the ground, right? That's not going to help anybody. Okay, so our next technique is called packing the wound. That's it's exactly as it sounds, okay? This is not the sexy part, but we're talking about saving lives, okay? So I have here in this package, it's called Quick Clot. It's a hemostatic dressing. It means that the gauze inside has been embedded with a clotting agent, right? Now, they sell bleeding control kits at medical device stores. Very soon, you're going to start seeing them in schools. Police officers are all going to be equipped with bleeding control kits. The same way we see the Heimlich posters, the same way we see the first aid kits, you're going to see bleeding control kits next to that as well. But that's always the number one question I get. So where do I buy a tourniquet? Or where do I buy these things? The medical supply stores have them for you. Okay, so we're going to use our deep wound here. Okay. Yes, my lovely assistant, Miss Crystal Edwards. So in our deep wound here, right, we tried pressure. It's still bleeding. We need to take action. We're going to pack the wound. Okay, now ideally, you would want to use some type of gauze. If you don't have gauze, you use what you can. A lot of people always ask me, but what about infection? What about, you know, it's an open cut. It has to be clean and sterile, right? Yeah, under ideal situations. But we lost the ideal situation when it was as soon as the guy with the gun walked in. That's not ideal. So I always tell people, the doctors have all the antibiotics in the world. They can take care of any local site infections. Don't worry about that. This is about stopping the flow of blood and saving a life or a limb. Okay, so when we talk about packing the wound, we're literally going to take our gauze or whatever material we have, and we're going to pack it into the wound. All right, and you got to get in there. And believe you me, this is not comfortable to the person that's injured. But that's when you have to step in and say, hey, I know, I'm saving your life. I'm saving your life. Help is on the way. You have to use whatever tools you have in your toolkit to keep that person calm while providing assistance. Okay? Because I guarantee you, if you save that person's life, you'll have a best friend for the rest of their life and your life. And they won't even remember the pain that they felt. Oh, my God, they saved my life. They'll be talking about you at Christmas, on birthdays, right? So don't worry about the pain, the momentary pain that that person may be feeling, okay? So we've packed the wound. Now, I bet you most people didn't think that we could get the entire ace bandage in there when we started. But you'd be surprised, okay? And David's pretty strong, too, all right? So we've packed the wound. Help has not arrived yet, and it's still bleeding. What do we do? Okay? And I see some of the faces. I know that this can be a little icky to talk about, but again, everybody is here because they were driven to learn more about being prepared in case of an emergency, and unfortunately, sometimes emergencies are messy, sometimes they're uncomfortable, and they're always unplanned. Okay? So, with that said, this is a tourniquet. Anybody familiar with the tourniquet? You might see in the movies, all right? Somebody, a bomb goes off and somebody, and they tie it around the leg, or they take like a rubber tube. This is a tourniquet. The goal of the tourniquet is to apply enough pressure to compress the veins and arteries to stop the flow of blood. Okay? So, tourniquet works like a belt. We're going to loop it around the limb. Thank you. And while we're doing that, I just want to say, the techniques that we're talking about are techniques to be used in the extremities. Anything in the center mass, a tourniquet won't help. Direct pressure may or may not help. We don't know what's going on internally, right? You may see just a little bit of blood. I see your hand. You may see just a little bit of blood. However, there could be a lot of internal bleeding, okay? And so something that doesn't look serious may be very serious. Anything center mass, you want to get help right away. Anything in the junctional parts of your body, your shoulders, your hips, your elbows, all right? Those are areas where you would apply direct pressure. you can't use a tourniquet in those areas. If I tie a tourniquet to my elbow and then bend my arm, it's not going to maintain the pressure. Okay, so I do just want to quickly say that. And then we had a quick question.
When you use the tourniquet, you have to know, you put it above the wound or below the wound?
Perfect. That was a perfect segue. She teed me up. The check is in the mail. Okay? So the question was, where do you apply the tourniquet? Okay? You always apply the tourniquet 2 to 3 inches above the wound. The easiest way for me to remember that is just use 3 fingers, and you want to apply it towards the center of the body. So if I get injured in my thigh, I want to apply the tourniquet above the injury towards the center of my body. Same with my arm. Now, let's say I get injured on my forearm. Am I going to put the tourniquet on my elbow, even though that's 2 to 3 inches above the injury? No, I'm not, because we just said we don't put a tourniquet at our junctional parts. We're going to put it slightly above. Okay, so we have the tourniquet in place. It's slightly above our injury, and we're going to pull it as tight as possible. Okay. Now, if you're doing this right, you should start to see the leg cinch in a little bit. Everybody see how it's a little cinched in here on the leg? That's the tightness and the amount of pressure that's actually needed to stop the flow of blood. Okay. So once we have, before you twist that, once we have the belt tied all the way around, there's a piece here. It's my favorite new word. It's called a windlass. I didn't make it up, but I like to use an English accent when I say it. Windlass. Okay? This is used to get even more torque and pressure on the limb. You twist it, you twist it, you twist it, and what happens is it compresses the leg even further. Okay? And because it's a little tough to do this with the mic, we're going to do like they do on the cooking shows, and voila. Okay? And so once you twist, 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 you lock it in place. You pull the strap over. There's Velcro on it. And you want to note the time. It's important to note the time so that EMS knows how long that part of the body has been without blood. Okay? There used to be a thought that after 20 minutes or so, the doctors may have to amputate the leg. That's not the case anymore. Medicine and science has evolved. The thought around this has evolved. And so, generally speaking, you have a couple of hours before the limb is at risk. However, it all depends on the severity of the injury. But I say that because that can be another source of anxiety if you're applying the tourniquet and you're looking at the time and the ambulance hasn't gotten there. All right. Remember, if you are providing aid, your job is to stay as calm as possible and to keep the injured person as calm as possible. Okay. So very quickly, if someone is injured, and I don't want to just link it to extreme violence, right? It's important if someone is shot or stabbed, but I don't like linking it to that because some people will hear that and go, well, I've never been shot. I don't know anybody that's been stabbed. This doesn't apply to me. And that's simply not the case. This is wound management. And I didn't see any hands before when I asked if there was anybody that was immune to injury. So this is something that could potentially happen to all of us in this room. Okay, so we're going to call 911. We're going to apply direct pressure. If that's not enough, we're going to find something and we're going to try and pack the wound. If that's not enough, we're going to use our tourniquet. We're going to place it 2 to 3 inches above the injury towards the center of the body or towards the heart. All right? We're going to tie it tight and we're going to note the time. Bless you. We're going to note the time so that EMS knows how long the tourniquet has been on. Okay, that was kind of the quick version for you, if you like. As the gentleman who spoke before me said, we also take this show on the road. Harlem Hospital is a community-based institution, and we believe in getting this information to the community. So if anyone would like this presentation for any groups that you are a part of or work with, please see me after. I have tons of cards on me. I would be more than happy to show up anywhere and everywhere to share this information. Sir? Yes, exactly. So, and that's much easier and more succinctly said than I said. Tourniquet goes between the injury and the heart. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
violent and emergency situation and somebody does end up getting shot in this area, there's nothing really you can do while you're waiting for this.
It's tough. It's tough because the reality is pressure isn't going to help because you have internal organs that may have been damaged and you just can't see the severity of the injury. So even if you're doing all of the techniques up here, well, you can't apply a tourniquet. But if you're doing direct pressure and it stops bleeding, you may be lulled into a false sense of confidence. Oh, I did it. Oh, I listened to that guy. I applied direct pressure. It stopped bleeding. This guy's going to be okay. I'm a hero. But because you can't see internal damage, you don't know what's going on. And so you just want to get them help as soon as possible. Okay. Any other questions with regard to stop the bleed? Okay. Thank you all for your attention. I'm going to turn the floor over to my colleague, Mr. David Cassian.